Hey there, welcome to Nerdy Reviews. I'm the Absolute Nerd, and today we're going to be reviewing After War Gundam X. Now, before I begin with the review, let me just drop off a couple of things here. If you haven't already, you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, and leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys what you think about this series, or if you've never even heard of it, or anything like that. So let's just go ahead and begin real quickly and briefly with the story regarding Gundam X. So this is another AC universe, or AU universe to be more specific, I apologize. This is set in the AW, or After War 15. Gerald Rand, our titular character right here, takes up the wrong job that gets him involved with a mercenary group and on the run from forces that are out to get them both. Now, the story does evolve furthermore from there, but that's just the basic premise. It kind of still stays the same with that underlying as the storyline, as the story does grow. And I don't want to give too much away, but it does involve our three characters right here. So we got Gerald Rand, we got Tifa, and then we got Jamil. I hope I say his name correctly, because the way his name is spelled is not the way I imagined, like how it sounds right, but it is what it is. So with After War Gundam X, it's a 39 episode series that was originally aired in Japan back in 1996. This is the third and final series in the mid-90s Gundam block that takes place in an alternative timeline instead of in the Universal Century. Like I mentioned already, this takes place in AU, or AW, which is After War. This is also the second series in the entire Gundam franchise that was cancelled, hence the 39 episodes. It was originally planned to be a 50 episode run. Unfortunately, with the low ratings that it got after its initial run, I think it was past the first 10 episodes or so, the ratings did dive down. So Sunrise decided to cut ties at that point and cancel the series. The series had a remainder of episodes left, so they rounded off to the 39 episodes and then went from there. This does impact how the series does play out, and I'll touch about that just a little bit. But it's really important to know that this series was canceled, and what we got seems like an unfinished product, but it's not terribly that bad, actually. This also, speaking with the cancellation of the Gundam X series, this also cuts the 4-year long-running streak that Sunrise was having with the Gundam franchise. Every single year since 1993 to 1996. Oh, sorry, that was no, sorry. Yeah, it was it's 4 years. I think it was like 92 to 93 is when Victory Gundam, if I'm not mistaken here. But what I had from my sources I pulled, it was 4 years running streak with Victory Gundam, G Gundam, Gundam Wing, and then Gundam X ending everything. Oh, I'm sorry. It's 3 series streak in 3 years, or 4 series streak in 3 years. God, that's a tongue tire. But with Gundam X being canceled, this does cancel out that little streak that Sunrise was having, and the next Gundam series that would ever air or appear on television would be 3 years later with Turn A Gundam. So it's kind of a little bit of a gap right there. Now, with the series itself, I do want to point out the animation. The animation's actually not that bad, considering that we came after Gundam Wing, which is a very stark difference between like Victory Gundam and G Gundam of the time, and then the year after, 95, with Gundam Wing. Animation was a lot different between the flush but flurious color, or like coloring and inking, to very hard line, starchy kind of colors and hard lines. Gundam X kind of does a little bit of both. So we have a shot here with Jamil here, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about, where it's kind of like Gundam Wing, where we got a lot of these starchy-esque colors and a lot of the hard lines. But then we get to other shots like this. I'm sorry, I wanted to show off the Frost Brother a bit too, but we get to another shot like this where we're in the open day, or even like there'll be times where we're in like snowy areas where it's a little bit more flush with the colors. So but we still got a lot of those like interesting lines. This one's a lot more softer. It looks more akin to like G Gundam, I would say. Not too much like Victory, but more towards G Gundam. again, we gotta kind of it mixes between these three here. Here's a scene here with the Frost brothers. I can't remember what scene this was specifically, but you can see what I'm talking about when we got a lot of these little harder lines. The colors in this one is like a little bit of a blend between the two. So we got a lot more of a starchy color from this one. We got more of a flushed out color on this. And then this one's a lot more of that nice contrast and control. So the series kind of fluctuates with its animation. It becomes more noticeable, I want to say, towards the latter episodes, which make more sense. So you could tell a little bit of the difference between like the beginning. It's weird. Beginning has a little bit of a funny animation, then the mid portion of the series, or a good portion of the series, seems to have that more consistency, and then towards the end, we kind of get something like this in the sense. But that's something I just want to talk about with the animation. Honestly, the animation's not that bad, especially for a 1996 series. I actually liked it. Definitely nothing compared to any of the OVA series that were released at that time, such as 8th MS Team, which has a lot more harder, contrastier colors, much more defined features. Not quite the same, but still good animation, in my opinion. This series is only available in subs or Japanese. It isn't available in the Japanese language, subs only for English. So that's how I actually got to watch the series. This is the second time I've actually watched this series. And considering what the voice actors and voice actresses I heard in the series, it's not bad. I mean, I enjoyed it. Everybody felt like they fit their roles perfectly. And when those really, really, not high and dry, but those emotional moments that occur, it really hits those moments. They did a fantastic job capturing a lot of that emotion or feeling with their depictions through their voices. So I think everybody who voice casted in the series did a fantastic job. I got nothing to really complain or say anything about it. As for the music of this series, it's a hit and miss. A lot of the music reminds me of like it's kind of like polarized, right? We get a lot of these 90s-esque music, kind of like 90s-esque. I feel almost 80s almost, but it's 90s-esque. And then we got these 90s-esque, super cheesy romantic music. So like you got the super actiony openings of Gundam X, which I love the openings of Gundam X. They're really fun openings. And then you get the main series itself. So you get, like a lot of the music that really sets a lot of the tone and atmosphere for every single moment. Although some of them kind of feel out of place, but it goes along with the characters. So again, I can't really fault it terribly too much, but it's not 100% my cup of tea, right? And then you get the ending music, which is completely different from majority of the series until like we get to some portions of the series, and it gets all this cheesy, romantic 90s-esque kind of music. So I was like, okay, right on. I really do have to say though, in tune with the 90s-esque music too, I really do like how they do the transition. So here's a really weird one. So when I talk about transition, I'm talking about like the opening and closings, right? The opening is very different than any other Gundam series I've seen. It has a hard title. It just says After War Gundam, or no, it says just Gundam X, if I remember correctly. And then it goes straight to the storyline, right? It goes straight to like either like previously or just playing what starting us off on a new arc. And then we'll get the opening sequence. Then after all that, we get to the end credits, right? And when the end credits roll, it rolls and it has a preview box. So you're watching the credits alongside with the preview, and you're getting the narration with the end credits music. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We haven't seen this in Gundam at this current time frame yet. Usually we just get the end credits and then the preview for the next episode. So they kind of merge the two together in that, which is kind of nice. The other thing I thought was kind of nice was that the episode titles themselves, so if you watch the previews, the episode titles are actually quotes from the next episode. So I thought that was actually kind of cool. I'm the kind of guy who laughs at like movies, for an example, that just says the name in the title of the name in the movie. So I kind of got a laugh while watching watching Gundam X, playing off the episode titles based off a quote from the episode. So I'm like, well, I mean, you kind of see it in the previews, but I usually skip the previews after I watch at least once, and I skip the previews. But I'm kind of like, where is this quote gonna fall in? Ah, there it is. There's the quote. Ah, is the title of the episode. I just had fun doing that. It's stupid and cheesy, but I enjoy it. But I thought that was something unique about Gundam X that they haven't done in the Gundam franchise at this current point in time yet. So that was kind of cool. Another like technical aspect I kind of want to touch on too was the sound effects of this series. A lot of the sound effects now, it's not that it's uncommon that a lot of mech series borrow sound effects or specific like noises or even music too from other series. I just feel like Gundam EXO wasn't as original comparative to like all the other Gundam series at that current time frame. Why I say this because a lot of the sound effects I hear sounds like it's coming like from Votom, so I'm hearing like like the treading, like the dash treads of the scope dogs, certain mechanical sound effects that were done for the mechs when they move around sound very much like something from Votom's. So I thought that was just kind of interesting, unique. I think also like some of the gunfire, like from the Gundam Leopard, for an example, were sound effects that came from like a scope dog's rifle, for an example, too. So I thought that was like another thing that was kind of interesting that like stuck out. I'm like, I haven't watched Votoms in a while, but that's a very familiar sound, and I know where exactly that came from. Because usually with mech series, like there are certain sound effects that are very specific or distinct to our suits, right? Like you hear a Gundam beam rifle, it's very distinct sound effect. You hear certain mechanical movements, you can indicate what suit it is almost, or like if it's a Gundam, or if it's a Zaku, or if it's a GM, depending on like the sounds the mech makes when it moves. Those sort of things. So I thought it was kind of weird that a lot of the sound effects, again, used for our mechs, used for a lot of our shooting sound effects or explosions, came from like Votoms. Other than that, Gundam X is a overall kind of like a interesting series. It's a very big, hard spin and a what if the Federation and Zeon took it to the extreme, like dial that turn that dial from a 10 to 11 in terms of what they were going to do. So the you get this in the very beginning episodes. I'm not spoiling much, but it's basically like, if I remember the names correctly, it was the Space Revolution Army, and then the Alliance. I can't remember if it was the Alliance or not. I'm getting things kind of mixed up here. But you got the two forces, and they're fighting so hard against each other because, you know, that's how wars are. But when they fight against each other so hard, we have it's the not Earth Federation. It's like Earth Alliance. I can't remember what it was, and actually, maybe I'll be able to find out real quick. I'm gonna cheat. United Earth Nations. That's what it was, or the new United Earth Nations at the time of the series, or in the beginning, United Earth Nations, right? And they escalated it harder with the Gundam X's and the other Gundams that they introduced, and then the Space Revolutionary Army like instead of doing. It's like Operation British, quite literally, Operation British. Times like 10 plus. I don't know how many colonies they dropped, but like they showed at the very beginning, like, oh yeah, Earth escalated and then the space colonies escalated, and they just dropped not just one colony, they dropped a ton of colonies. And that's what we gotta get with Gundam X, is that huge what if, like what if the war went to the extremes and how that would turn out. And so what we get in the world of Gundam X, I want to say Turn X, Gundam X. The world of Gundam X is very much an apocalyptic-esque world where people are just meagerly surviving. You got like these little like villages or little cities like thriving for the most part. And you got a lot of people who are basically like mercenaries, or in this case they're called vultures or orcs, depending where you're what land or sea you are. But you'll get like vultures like Jamil here, who would take up jobs to fund themselves, but they'll do all kinds of jobs, some good and some not so great. And then you got people like Gerard, I can't say his name correctly. It looks weird. I want to say Gerald, but there's no L. Gerard, very much is just kind of like in the middle. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna do my thing, either hijack mobile suits and sell them to make money, or just, you know, trying to make a mercenary's life. So it was kind of an interesting perspective, and I feel a lot of what Gundam X feels like Fist of the North Star meets Gundam, and then they mesh that together. I think that first half of the series really does a fun thing. This is where I say it's a lot of fun watching it because it's a different world in a different tone or different atmosphere and tone compared to any other Gundam series at this time. That's what I kind of like and enjoy about the AU series. As much as I love the Universal Century, AU stuff really like refreshes things and kind of puts a new spin on the Gundam universe, and it's a lot of fun. I kind of want to revisit some of the world like universes. Like I would love to see a future in After War, because it definitely has a lot of interesting perspectives into it, and definitely want to see where it goes in the future. Unfortunately, what all we have right now is this series, and if I'm not mistaken, here a couple of manga that were spin-offs / sequels to Gundam X. Oh well. Now, I kind of already mentioned this already with Gundam X. We deal with this Fist of North Star meets Gundam kind of a thing. And I mentioned that was like the first half of it. The other half of the series kind of tends to go back to its original tendencies with Gundam being very heavy in the politics of war and factions and stuff like that. But it doesn't come into play till much later in the series. What really is the driving focus, and this is where I'm like, well, it kind of ties back to the original Gundam, and Gundam or Turn A Gundam does a nice job of tying everything back together. But new types are in this series, so you kind of think it's a little bit weird, and like, how are new types really here if it's not part of the Universal Century? So, if you watch my Gundam or Turn A Gundam review, you're gonna know that everything ties in together. But I'm not gonna go dive into Turn A right now. We're gonna talk about X. So when it comes to the whole concept that they bring in with new types, you could almost make a drinking game out of this. They really drive home with the whole concept of new types. Later, not even later on in the series, like only a few episodes into the series, we get the whole idea of what our crew of the Frieden is going to do, which is Jamil's mission to rescue any and all new types. And it's ridiculous how many times you hear the word new type in this series. I think I've heard the word new type said in this series more times than the original Gundam and Zeta Gundam combined. I wanted to throw ZZ Gundam, but I think ZZ Gundam would outcount the amount of times they say the word new type. I think they average they average saying new type at least 5 times an episode or more. I stopped counting at points, but they say it a lot in this series, and it gets more frequent towards the end of the series. So new types are the driving force of this series. Jamil being a new type alongside with Tifa here. Not spoiling a whole lot, folks. Don't worry about it. It's covered like in the first few episodes, so you don't have to worry too much about that. But their mission is the search out for new types and rescue them or stop them. And they really drive a lot more with the whole new type nuance and the tones and themes as we progress. It gets more and more heavier with them, and it ties right back to a lot of core elements and themes from the Gundam franchise as an overall. I don't want to talk too much on that because I don't want to spoil too much of the series. Believe me when I say that, though, that it's kind of odd that at first it doesn't seem like it's going to go a whole lot into the Gundam mythos, especially with this kind of Fist of the North Star apocalyptic-esque world storytelling, but it gets there somehow. And I find that very interesting because I was like, okay, this could be a completely brand new series. This could be completely weird. It's going to be like G Gundam. Nothing I'm going to expect from this. And bam, it does full circle come back to the Gundam mythos, the core elements of the Gundam franchise. So I like that a whole lot. Unfortunately, though, as we come along, there's a big problem with that, though, and that really dumbs down to the pacing of the series. The first half of the series, I want to say at least the first 20 episodes, is a bit of a grind. Not like a bad grind, though. I mean, like, it takes a while where it wants to go with the story. Like, after the first few episodes, like I mentioned, we kind of get an idea of what the Friedens, that's the name of the ship, the crew of the Frieden, their mission that they want to do is to free or rescue new types, like Tifa. So we go about that, but it goes about it in a very slow pace. Some people complain about it. I don't complain about it necessarily because I actually like the slow pace because we get to take our time with our characters. We actually have some singular focused episodes on some of our characters, which I like a lot because I like paying attention to our characters more than what's going on in the world. in a sense, because we want to build our connection with our characters, right? We want to care about them, because if we're not invested in them, then why do we care about watching the series overall, right? That's at least how I feel about it. And not to say that there's not enough action in the series, and I'll get to that in a little bit too, but primarily on the pacing, I think they did a fantastic job pacing wise. How I feel about it, between the first 20 episodes, I feel like it was a right amount between giving enough time with our characters, talking about the story, and then having the action in all that. So it's a nice, good sandwich, in my opinion. Past the 20th episode, though, I would say it gets really, really more noticeable about episodes 28 or so. That's when the cancellation starts to kick in, and then things kind of flip around. So the pace of the story becomes like a lot more like condensed down, and it feels really, really fast. At points, it kind of reminds me, almost not the same level, but pretty much reminds me a lot like compilation movies of the Gundam franchise, where things kind of happen and you just kind of accept it, not so much as like, okay, whatever, we're not just gonna move along with the story, right? Not enough time for you as a viewer to digest it or enjoy it or really rationalize it. A lot of the actions that the characters do feel very not convoluted. It feels very forced, very contrived, is what I would get at. I mean, it makes sense for the characters, but it just, as we know them for the first 20 episodes, and then we get to the 28th and beyond, it feels very contrived for them. It feels very forced. And it's not like, oh, why did they do that? I mean, no, it makes sense that they would do that, but it just feels way too fast. And it makes sense because the series is getting canceled. So they're trying to scoot along as fast as they can throughout the entire story to hit the deadline and finish telling the story. So it's like a hit and miss. It feels like there's more action going on that helps drive the story and the pacing, and then just trying to link things together. And it feels like the director is more or less hoping that the viewers who are already familiar with the characters of the first 20 episodes or so would be able to understand what's going on beyond that, because the characters are going to start doing a lot of actions that if you weren't paying attention in the series, it would feel like, why are they doing this? It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, no, it makes sense. If you've been paying attention, like, you'll know that this in this particular moment, this character would be doing this, and that makes absolute sense. But I could see where a lot of people kind of get like frustrated with Gundam X, or not really like it because of the pacing at that point, and a lot of things just kind of go out the window. I also want to say this too. I mentioned about Votoms earlier in regards to the sound effects. The ending of this series, the last 2 episodes, reminds me a lot of the last couple of episodes of Votoms itself. I will not spoil in either series for you folks in this particular review, but eventually I will talk about it in a future review / when I do like a theory thing or whatnot. Or a theory dive into Gundam X. But believe me when I say this, that the ending they're very much similar, not the same, but very similar, and it's just kind of an odd coincidence I kind of picked out, where we're getting sound effects of Votoms, we're in an apocalyptic kind of world, and then we have an ending that's very similar. Votoms, while it takes place in multiple planets, is very apocalyptic in itself in many of its settings, be it in a city, in a jungle, a dead planet, or on an ancient planet. They're all pretty apocalyptic in some manner or form. You then also have, of course, the sound effects of Votoms itself, and then you get the ending. I wonder if Gundam X is trying to be original or not, or are they treading on something that was already done? I don't know. I'm speculating here, but you see where I'm saying where there's some kind of similarities, at least in that regards. That said, though, as I already mentioned too, the action in the series, though, is what really, really is a good driving force for it too. So if the story is not so much your thing, the action is actually really there for this series. I actually enjoyed a lot of the action sequences. There's a lot of fun fighting here. It does get a little bit exciting. While our Gundams do seem kind of invincible, they are not invulnerable, though. They can get damaged, they can get destroyed. So I thought that was kind of cool to watch a lot of that stuff, and it makes it exciting. I get kind of amazed because at first I thought this was gonna be like a lame series. Like, oh man, what are they gonna do? It's post-apocalyptic with Gundam. How are they gonna make this fun? How are they gonna make this interesting? They find ways to make this interesting. They find ways to make this really fun, and they do this consecutively throughout the episodes. I am never disappointed about the action throughout the entire series. I think if there's one thing that's gonna be consistent besides talking about new types and the underlying tones that eventually drive to the core themes of the Gundam franchise, is definitely the action. The action of this series is, again, I keep saying it in a lot of my other reviews, but it's a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed watching the action here. That's I just want to talk about a couple of things here. I do want to mention that this series probably has one of my most favorite episodes in the entire Gundam franchise. Episode 15, which is a backstory, not really a backstory, it's like a kind of a backstory with a future telling. It's like one of those kind of episodes. I don't know how to describe it unless you watch it. And it's featuring our other two Gundam pilots, which is Robea and Wheats. I really, really enjoyed their backstories and the lead ups of what happened. This episode is a catalyst for them going forward into the series, but man, that's a really good episode. I can't believe how much it was. It's great storytelling alongside with the action that does come along with it too. So definitely a top series I really enjoyed. Correction, not top series, top episode. Now some of the things I've already mentioned were kind of like it's positives and faults at the same time. There is one major fault I had with this series itself. Not it's not a huge one though, but it really irked me for the longest time, which was the character of Enel. Enel is a female mercenary who has a straight blood boiling rage against Garrod. And I always found that her anger and her motivation as a character, especially towards Garrod, did not make any sense whatsoever. Long story short, she basically hates his guts with a burning passion because this kid right here spurred her advances and didn't have a crotch rocket explosion for her. Okay, you had other guys who were coming on to her in the entire series, and then she's coming after Garrod, and he spurs her, and that's what motivates her to want to kill him. Right, and then also wanting to kill the crew of the Frieden and all that stuff. I just could not understand and get behind that mentality. But I try to dumb it down, like in a post-apocalyptic world where no one cares about a lot of things and they're just trying to survive. I suppose the most pettiest of emotions or the pettiest of insults to one's emotion can spur them to that level. So I try to understand and rationalize this character and what was her motivation. I'm like, because other than that, it really, at this point of time and everything, it just did not make sense whatsoever. And I felt like, why did she even bother? Why is she doing all of this and putting everybody in danger for her grudge against Gara? It baffled me, but I'm like, okay, well, let's take ourselves out of our own shoes here, put ourselves into their shoes, and then furthermore, there's not a whole lot of too much of a backstory about Enel that we get. We do get something in the series, but I feel like this driving force, because she is kind of like the Team Rocket almost to the series. She's a reoccurring antagonist, and I just can't get behind why she's that determined to kill the crew of the Frieden, but specifically Garrod. I just couldn't get behind that. But that's all I have to say about Gundam X as an overall of a series itself. But I do want to jump over to our next little segment here, which, if you're familiar, is my favorite suits of the series. Now, if you're familiar with my reviews or you're not familiar, let me just tell you this. With every single Gundam series into the Gundam franchise, it brings a whole new slew of mobile suits, new designs, redesigns, battleships, those sort of things. Gundam X is no different to this rule. It's another one of those series that does bring in a whole new amount of mechs. There are some positives and negatives to that, though. I do want to say, when it comes to the suits and whatnot that do come out for this series, a lot of the suit designs are not that great. They're pretty ugly. Let me show you an example. One of the first, no, this is not the first suit that we see. I'll show you the first suit that we see, and unfortunately, it's a redesign of a suit that I hold near and dear. It is the Genis. And if you take a quick look at that, you're going to notice real fast, what does that look like, folks? That looks like a Zaku 2, or a Zaku, or anything that belongs in the Zaku family. It does have that mono eye, if I'm remembering correctly. I can't remember, because you usually see it like this, you don't really see a red eye. Apologize for that. But it's not that great. I mean, like, I think the one thing that really bothers me is just the head design. I mean, the overall, like, mech, yeah, it's... I like my bulky suits, but I like my bulky suits with definition or texture with details, right? That you could see it. The suit, and even the series itself, too, looks kind of ugly. It looks uglier in motion. This is very cleaned up. But it just looks like a blob of green. It doesn't have any defined features to it, like really good defined features that you can spot out. It meshes too well with itself, and it's not that great looking, in my opinion. Something also about giving a mobile suit a mustache. I mean, with the exception of Turn A, no, the mustache, no go. I mean, I can't. Well, I got a beard actually, but still, no, not great on the suit. On the suit. But this is the first suit that we see, and it's not that fantastic looking. It doesn't get any better, because then we get to what is the GM class suits, the Daughters. You see what I mean? I'll put it this way: big boots, big kneecaps, big hips, and then like a weird body, like everything like big, small, big, small, big, small, big, small. It looks kind of weird. And then you put the cherry on the top, which is the head. I mean, literally, it's a cherry. There's your stem, and then there's the cherry itself. What's up with the camera, the head system? Like, a lot of the heads that you see from, like, I keep wanting to call them Federation, but the United Nations suits look a lot like this, and they're very, they're ugly. Here, get another one right here. You see what I mean? It's really wonky, not that fantastic looking designs. I didn't care for a lot on the mobile suit designs. Before I get to some of my favorites, I do want to talk about at least honorable mentions, and I'm going to actually start off with this too, as it's funny enough, I'm going to show you like some of these forms, but a lot of the Gundams is what I'm going to be primarily talking about, because that's the only thing I actually like from this series as design-wise. But you're going to notice a trend here. Right here I have is the Gundam Astron's Hermit Crab. This is the upgraded form of the Gundam Astron. You're going to start seeing a trend here. For some odd reason, I find it though, but some odd reason, the upgraded forms of the suits look like or trash. And the first forms of these suits are really cool looking. So I mean, Gundam Astron, I'm not going to close this just off, but I'll just try to... I do want to mention Astron because I like my transforming mobile suits. This also looks like a Big Row almost. Like a Big Row mixed with a Zaccarello almost. Not really Zaccarello. One of the two. It's kind of like a mix mash, because Zaccarello does... You know what? Volvero mixed with a Big Row. There you go. That's a better way of putting it, because it has like the Volvero's arms-esque. And kind of like the Big Row's design, just a little bit more stretched out instead of more of a stout nose. But I thought it was kind of a cool design. The only thing I didn't care about the Astron, honestly, is like how it has the pincers. You're going to notice here also in the first form, which I think looks cooler, because when it transforms, I actually like the transformed form more than I liked this one right here. In addition to that, when it's untransformed, because this looks like a gaudy suit that makes no sense, this one does. Like, it uses these little pincer arms to, like, snap suits in half, kind of like a crab, right? I mean, it makes sense. It's the the Zoidberg the suits. But this one just kind of overkilled it, and it just didn't look appeasing as a suit. But I only really mentioned it because I liked it as a transformable suit. There, I think this is the, if I remember correctly, this is the only one that was a transformable suit. I don't recall seeing anything else that transformed. There was another like fighter based thing, but it never transformed. And there's a Bergito in this series, but it doesn't really transform. It goes kind of like from like arms and legs to like a star form. Kind of reminds me of a flux capacitor. Here's another thing too. This is the Gundam Versago brake chest. It's the upgraded version of it. It looks not that bad. If you guys have watched my previous episodes regarding Gundam Wing or G Gundam, you're gonna kind of notice that the villain suits, the antagonistic suits, at least one of them, is gonna feature this red and black design with horns, like devil-esque, right? With this 90s block, G Gundam, Gundam Wing, and we have now Gundam X, Gundam, in G Gundam, we have Master Gundam, Gundam Wing, we have Epion, and now we have with Gundam X is the Versago Gundam. I will also show you its first form right here. But you see what I mean, where they kind of have these, like, it's a horn designed with a black and red color scheme. Might not be 100% the same, but I mean, like, there's some similar features. The horns like this can be seen from, like, the Master Gundam or Epion. The claws right here can definitely be seen from, an example would be Gundam Epion. The wings that you have right here could be akin towards either, you could say, Epion or Master, but you see what I'm saying, where there's a lot of similarities between the main mid-90s core block of Gundam series that were released. I do want to show you, like, it's not really a transformer, but like when it gets into its mega beam cannon, right? It does this like devil-esque look. So like it something like the devil from Disney's Fantasia or something like that. You see what I mean? Like it kind of has this like cool aspects to it. It's an okay suit overall. I got nothing else to really talk about. It's not really my favorite designs. But I do want to talk about my favorite Gundams. And here we go. And it's going to kind of be weird, but the Gundam Double X. So my favorite actually of the two is actually the Gundam X. I didn't care about Double X. In fact, there's a lot of things I didn't like about Double X versus X. Now, I mean, I could say I like a little bit more of the Divide X, but I actually like the original X itself. The thing about like Double X here, and like some fans go, why don't you like Double X more than X? I'm like, here's a couple things. It's a really bulky looking suit. A lot of its armaments and the features, like it doesn't really do a whole lot of like fighting per se. It's very base level fighting. Nothing really cool or exciting that it does. It just uses, it's really, it doesn't have much of a shield. I think it has like a, let me try and see if I can pull the shield here. There's a really tiny, itty bitty little shield here. And like it shoots at times. It doesn't really, it kind of uses, it's cool. I like the beam saber it has. It's got a nice little grip. Let me see if I can pull that out. Got this cool little grip that like it detaches, like it pops off from the hip. Like you can see where it sockets off. And the beam itself, it's really cool with the beam saber. But I'm like, other than that, like the Gundam X doesn't really, Double X, I have to say Double X. Double X doesn't really do a whole lot. And it's kind of sad. Yes, its twin satellite cannons are a beast. They are scary cool. But in all honesty, it's okay. I really don't like, I like little gems in the front of the suit for some odd reason, but this thing looks too much like a kind of like a windshield for like a helicopter / jet, and it just doesn't gel with me when I'm looking at a suit that's fully standing, and it's not even a transformable suit. Granted, if it does its twin buster satellite cannons, that's it. Here, let me pull it. There you go. When it does its twin satellite cannons, I mean, it's okay. I really like though the Gundam X. Something about the design itself. Again, it has that little gem in the front. I think the body reminds me a lot. The main body reminds me a lot like the Wing Gundam and stuff like that. Its fighting capabilities are actually pretty neat. Even though it got upgraded to the Divide, I actually like this one because I like how the backpack function. Like the backpack had this weird like swivel motion. So besides going into, let me see if I can get it to satellite cannon mode, right? So besides going to satellite cannon mode, it can actually like turn itself around, like kind of like if this is the backpack, it'll pop off and then switch around, right? And then pop down. So like for an example, like this backpack will pop down. The sword is right here. It will pop down to here. So Garrod would pull it out like that. And I'm like, that's so cool. So the sword can be popped out from any other direction. I thought it was kind of fun where it was doing a lot of these like unique actions for the most part. Other than that, it's weird when I say this because I feel like even though Gundam X didn't get a whole lot of rise and shine, and then when it goes to Divide, between the two they're kind of similar. But I just like the design and look of Gundam X versus Divide, and kind of the same suit. They fight in a much more unique way, and there's a lot more excitement watching Gundam X fight versus Double X. That's my 2 cents on that. But I mean, rounding it off, I like the Gundam X. Coming in our number 2 spot, and you're gonna see again this trend, is the Leopard Gundam. Now I showed you the Destroy first because I didn't care for the Destroy mode. I actually like the original. It's kind of weird because like the original, this thing, does it show it now? Let me see. The way that its Gatling arm attaches, it locks the whole entire arm in, so the whole entire arm becomes like a Gatling gun itself. It's like a weird version of heavy arms. In fact, a lot of these suits are very reminiscing towards suits that we've seen in the past. Yes, Gundam Leopard is pretty much a different redesign of heavy arms itself, and I find my guilty pleasure in seeing suits that, have machine guns or like firing like crazy amounts of missiles and machine guns and stuff. I like that. I don't know why. I really like the Leopard. It was a simple design. It's got the little gem on the chest. And then, it has got 2 missiles hidden on the front, like the arm piece, like the little chest pieces right here. It's got the cool little cannons on it. I mean, the cannons are like okay, they're not bad. But this thing just sold it for me. It really, really sold that suit. Leopard, of course, is an upgraded form. It just doesn't look as cool when it's in full form because it has these like weird. It's a weird backpack that like attaches the guns to the hand, and you're like, it's okay. I just also like how they changed the color on the Leopard too, from that teal-esque color to this red. I didn't care much for it. I also felt like when I look at it, it had less amount of equipment than it does. It actually has more. I mean, like, it has all these missiles right here, some additional missiles right here. We got new cannons right here. Are they beams? I can't remember. But honestly, I can't actually tell because a lot of the shots kind of look the same. And sometimes they intersplice the sound effects for the weapon. So like it's hard to tell, like, is it a beam or is it a cannon? And we don't get to see a whole lot of the Leopard too. So Leopard Destroy specifically. But I mean, again, it's that trend that I have with Gundam X. It's so weird. I don't care for the upgraded forms. I like the original forms better. And definitely Leopard 2 hits my Gundam Leopard hits my number 2 spot. But if we're going to talk about my absolute favorite suit from this series, it's a growing trend with myself as well, but if you haven't already know, I love transformable mobile suits. So the first one I want to show is the second form of it, because I have a hard time picking between this one is actually legit where I had a hard time picking between the first or second form. It's really, really hard. Because I really do like the burst form of Airmaster. And I love it when it transforms because it's got these additional portions to it. It looks lame. All right, so trust me when I say this. It looks lame like this because we're kind of getting more of a aerial side shot. But most of the times when we're seeing it fight or fly around, we're seeing it from the front view. So it looks like a legit, like really cool looking jet that's shooting and stuff like that. Or like some base level where it has like, you can see like the beam rifles. Let me show you on the Airmaster. Love the Airmaster's design. I'm sorry, but like, see it like that. So we get a lot of this front aerial view. I really enjoy and love the design of that. Love transformable suits, even though this suit is so basic. It's so basic, even Gundam X has more features than this. Because the only thing Airmaster has going for it is transforming and its dual beam rifles. That's it. I I do believe we did get some more armaments with the burst, but nothing else. I don't even think I've ever seen it use a beam saber whatsoever. I know it didn't have it in its first form. Can't remember if it was in the secondary or not. Yeah, this suit does not have a beam saber. It's so weird. Fixed armaments, let me just double check. Yeah, it does not, because I'm like, I could swear it did use melee at one point, but I think it's because someone saved him and it's not him using his own melee. Wheat's using melee. But yeah, it's like it primarily is just a flying transformable suit that can shoot double beam rifles. Now the double beam rifles I can lose or miss, but like I just love that I can transform and it has all that firepower. But between the two, like you can see, like try and look at this design right here, right? Maybe I should do a side by side. Let's do a side by side. Yeah, can I get it to work? There we go. Like side by side here, right? Let me see if I can I get a second. Oh no, if I do my second screen, I apologize. So I'm gonna scroll this one up a little bit, and then we're gonna do a little comparison. There we go for you guys. We do the side by side. I really do. I'm like, even though I like the color scheming for Burst, the original Airmaster is where it's at for me. I love the overall design. The chest kind of looks a little bit different. I think maybe it's the coloring that kind of throws it off for me, but like the way that the wings fold, the overall look and aesthetics of it, I really like the original Airmaster compared to the Burst. If we're talking about transform modes, it's a little bit harder. That's why I'm like, I went with the original Airmaster. Funny enough, I mean, it's kind of weird, like I kind of like villainous characters or whatnot, but like his fighter jet form reminds me of Starscream's look and colors from the original Transformers. So I think it's kind of funny I mentioned Transformers after the whole BBC thing with the Olympics in Japan. Yeah. But I mean, to be honest though, I mean, seriously, he does have kind of the Starscream looks as a, if I remember right, I think Starscream was like an F-15 jet in the original series, and the color scheme too. Any Transformer fan can correct me. I'm not a huge Transformer fan, but I do enjoy Transformers from time to time. But I think this one, the Burst reminds me of Thundercracker, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's what I want to say when it comes to the suit overall. Definitely Airmaster is my favorite suit of the entire series. Purely because it's a transformable suit and has that dual beam rifles. It's a really neat, cool design. I liked it a lot. Well, then there's not that many designs I really liked from Gundam X. A lot of honorable, like a few honorable mentions with you know, the main Gundams being the top tier for my favorites. But yeah. Now, going forward too, let's go ahead and start off with our next little segment here, which is I'm new to the Gundam franchise. Should I start with Gundam X first? You know what I'm gonna say is just, yeah, sure, go ahead. I think you can start off with Gundam X first as your first foray into the Gundam franchise. I say this because it's again kind of like the core 90s Gundam block right there. I think it's a very easily accessible series, not by means of like actually accessing it, but viewing wise, right? It's more accessible viewing wise. As a series that helps you get into the Gundam franchise itself. It's got a lot of action, and then as the series progresses, it really starts following alongside with some of the core elements of the Gundam franchise. And I feel like if you jump into this series and you jump around from any point from after that, I think you're going to be absolutely fine. This is a self-contained story. There is no sequel other than being in a manga format, so you can't go wrong with this series at all. I think it'd be an easy start alongside with a lot of things that came through that mid-90s block. So yeah, definitely if you have this on hand, if you were able to get a hold of it, or someone was lending it to you, this would be a fine series to start off. In fact, it's pretty good. I recommend it. Now, as for an overall, even though Gundam X did get the axe, it is a great and fun show. It takes a fun what-if spin on the Universal Century and then goes completely apocalyptic with the story. while the story can feel rushed towards the end, the main story with the copious amount of action keeps you hooked and enjoying the ride throughout the entire series. It's a crying shame that Gundam X did not get the full time to develop itself. Other than that, even though it was short-lived, After War Gundam X gets that short but sweet 4 out of 5. Yeah, I really did enjoy Gundam X. There wasn't anything wrong with the series. I mean, like, yes, I know some people didn't like it because it's either the pacing or was a little bit awkward compared to the other Gundam series in the franchise. But if you look at it at a holistic standpoint and just, I watch it as a UC fan, a UC elitist, a Gundam fan, and someone who just wants to enjoy watching stuff, right? Watching anime and something fun. Gundam X had everything. I couldn't find anything that I truly disliked with Gundam X, other than the fact that, yeah, the story got kind of a little bit messier towards the end, but it still was coherent, and it followed along with the characters. Nothing didn't make too much nonsense, with the exception of a couple of things like Enel. But other than that, I can't fault this series. It was great. It was really enjoyable. Definitely recommend it if you get your hands on it. At the moment here, the only way you're going to be able to get your hands on this series is through the DVDs or Blu-rays released by Right Stuff. Now, with that said, guys, if you haven't already, if you're watching this on Twitch, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account. If you're watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you guys. Did you like Gundam X? Did you not like it at all? Did you think it was a garbage series? Do you think it's fantastic? Did you like my opinions? Did you don't like my opinions? Did you find something wrong? Do you agree with me? I want to hear from you guys. Leave a comment down below. As always, I do want to thank you guys for sticking around and watching this review. And until the next nerdy reviews, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.